Hey, everybody. Welcome to another edition of Coaching from the Couch. This is your Washington Commanders update, and I am your host, CWall, checking in as I do each and every single week to give you the latest and greatest information about the Washington Commanders. We're going to for sure get into the conversation. Although we know that the Washington Commanders made some moves on the day after Thanksgiving, I said, you know what? We will still reconvene on Monday. We will not do a reaction show like we did with the trades of Montez Sweat and Chase Young. I said, you know what? I was hanging out with the family and I said, we're going to wait until showtime on Monday to go through all of the Washington Commanders updates, get your live engagement, your live interaction with everything going on. Again, if you're just tuning in, this is from the Coaching from the Couch series, the Washington Commanders update. I'm your host, CWall. This is a live Bowie television recording. Make sure you hit that love button and share this show with your Washington Commanders loving family and friends. If you're watching from YouTube, drop a fire emoji, hit the thumbs up, hit the bell so that I know that you are watching. So we're still gonna do what we always do, and that's starting out with my favorite game. And here's the reality. Just what's your one word? I'm not even gonna say what's your one word, John Adams, for how you felt after the game or how you felt about the news of head coach Ron Rivera relieving Jack Del Rio of his duties. I'm not even gonna ask you what's your one word for those things specifically, Mazdak. And I see, shout out to Pops Waller as well, because he's gonna watch. What's your one word for all of it? Just all of it. Just the whole thing. And while you're dropping your one word, make sure you hit the love button and share this show with maybe it's not your Washington Commanders loving right now. Maybe it's your Washington Commanders frustrated right now. Maybe that's what it is. I see Cameron Mingo has chimed in, and his one word is done. I see Chase Dark Flame Gaming says one word here, bummed. So John Adams says his one word is wasted. Wasted. You can take that a whole lot of different ways. And Mazdak, same old. Same old. It continue to drop those one words in the chat. Listen, I'm proud. I don't even have anything to say at this point. I mean, I think we've used about every word between disappointed, frustrated, unacceptable, debacle. I mean, hey, depressed, angry, frustrated. We've used so many of these words to describe this season. And I will tell you this. And I had shared with you all on my page. I said, hey, whatever happens, don't let it ruin your day. Don't let it ruin your day. And I'm smiling here a little bit because while I said don't let it ruin your day, it definitely didn't ruin mine. It didn't ruin anyone else's that I know either. Well, that was there in terms of that was working. But it seems always like just when you think it can't get any worse, it does. Just when you think that what you're watching can't go down the hill any faster and have an impact so horrible that it just takes your breath away a little bit. Like, oh my gosh, what are we just when you think you already are expecting and you've predicted and have prepared yourself for what you're about to watch, I still find myself in shock of what could I possibly be watching. And I see John Adams' comment here that it's ruined his whole season. And I have several questions for you. Also, a lot to talk about. And when I'm going to share with you all, and you may have seen it by now, but I have to go back through all of the things to give the recap. And I'm going to share Coach Ron Rivera's after game press conference. I'm going to tell you, I said it on my page, but that may have been one of the worst Commanders Cowboys games I feel like I've watched in a long time. That was pretty bad. And when you have Dak Prescott on the sideline eating a turkey leg before the game is even over, I mean, how disrespectful. I mean, I'm not saying there's anything wrong with it, but I am saying it was disrespectful. Not saying I wouldn't have done it, because chances are I would have. So it was just if ever you were going to feel like you didn't want to watch the rest of the Commander season, I would agree with you. I would also say there is some good football being played up the Beltway. Just saying. And I'm not saying that, let me be clear, because I've said that a few times, like, well, hell, they're still playing good football up the Beltway. And it's not so much of a switching teams. You all hear me say all the time, watch what other teams are doing. Watch how other people are playing, because that will let you know where your team truly stands amongst all of this. It will really tell you the truth on where the Commanders are when you watch other teams play. It is the truth. And when you see how other organizations operate, it lets you know exactly where the bar is. Now, I'm not saying you don't have to hate, but if you want to watch professional football being played, not saying you got to cheer, not saying you got to like the color purple. I mean, the movie, yes, not necessary, but just saying you can watch other teams play. It's okay. There will be absolutely zero judgment from CWall on that one. Aside from the fact that Bowie TV covers the Ravens as well. Small plug there. But I'm just being serious. And I'm going to share with you all the after game press conference with Coach Rivera. Put in the chat just your overall thoughts. The relieving of Jack Del Rio and Brent Weisselberger, just all of the things that have transpired from Thursday to today. Coach Ron Rivera being the defensive coordinator now and taking over those responsibilities. Drop your thoughts in the chat. The after game presser is about 4 or so minutes long, but you still have time to, while you're watching the presser, to get your Washington Commanders watching. I'm gonna find a word that's suitable versus loving for the time and place. Washington Commanders watching, family and friends, they might want to chime in and have some thoughts on where things are headed, where things currently are, and where things could potentially be headed.
What do you think? How are you feeling? How do you interpret what's happened out there?
Well, it was unfortunate. We're in a game and we're fighting, we're battling, we're scrapping, and we just basically lost control of it. near the latter part of the third quarter. And, it just one of those things, you got to make some plays. You get to a fourth down situation, don't make a play. That's tough.
You guys came into this game as a clear underdog and struggling. Why did you decide to punt on those early possessions rather than perhaps setting an aggressive tone by going for it?
Mostly because of how the game was progressing. It was tight, it was close, so there was an opportunity. If we keep it tight and keep it close, the way we play down the stretch, who knows what happens. So until we got to, like I said, later in the third quarter, that's what it was.
What did you make the defense today?
Well, it had its moments, but, a little inconsistent at times. Third quarter came out, got some stops early on, and then, unfortunately, like I said, it just got away from us at that point.
Are you worried about what could happen after this game, just in terms of job security or anything like that?
I've told you before, I'm not worried about anything. All I'm going to do is do my job and see how things go. That's the only thing I can do.
How the defense has kind of been doing this a lot this year, the big plays and all that. How surprised are you and disappointed that it hasn't seemed to have gotten any better with that?
Well, I know this. At one point today, there were some good things that they were doing. And again, as I said, they just got away from us a little bit later in the third quarter. And, the biggest thing is we just got to continue to evaluate and work to get it corrected.
And in that evaluation, with I guess the obvious questions are any staff changes with that. Is that part of the evaluation with that?
I'm not going to get into any of that stuff.
Is there a time period where you do have to get into that stuff?
I'm not going to get into that stuff, okay?
Then just defensively tonight, is there something Dallas did particularly on the outside to attack the secondary that maybe was unexpected or surprising?
No. I think, again, we game planned them. I thought going into it, I thought we had some good things going. And unfortunately, we didn't do the things that we needed to do.
Going back to the defense, Coach, specifically the pressure on Dak Prescott. Again, going back to what you did last week, we were able to get after the quarterback there for the Giants, but this week, no sacks on Dak. What did they do to make life easier for Dak?
Well, I think they mixed some things up. They got the ball out of his hand early on. They ran some play actions, ran some bootlegs. And, unfortunately, we just didn't get the pressure.
Coach, we talked earlier in the week about the Cowboys screen game. They were able to have some success tonight with it, and then also on the edges of the defense. Can you put your finger on what failed there?
Well, one of the biggest things, is you got to set the vertical edges and keep everything contained, keep it inside you, not let it get outside.
Coach, your observations of the game that Sam Howell had tonight.
Well, I thought Sam did some things. He was efficient early on. Made some really good decisions, got the ball out early. But when you get into a position where you're trying to score, and they know you're trying to score, it gets really tough on you.
What happened on the fourth down where Jahan ran into Brian? What happened on the fourth down where Jahan ran into Brian?
Well, again, that's going to have to take a real good look at the tape and see how that all jumbled up. I do know they got some penetration on that side.
If there are no changes, can players expect the results to change?
I'm not going to answer that question.
Take two more.
What's the conversation like with the team after that game?
It was tough, solemn, because there was a point, we came out and they were playing, giving ourselves a chance. But again, as I said, later on in the third quarter, it just got away.
Last one.
Coach, on the sidelines, some heated conversations between coordinators or Jack Del Rio, the players, even John Allen got involved. I know you want to speak specifically to what was said, but can you kind of share the spirit of the conversation that were happening? Fair enough.
All right. Thanks, Coach. Appreciate it.
So if you are just tuning in from the Coaching from the Couch series, this is your Washington Commanders update. I am your host, CWall. This is a live Bowie television recording. Washington Commanders loving, I guess. Washington Commanders watching still, I guess. Family and friends, hit the love button, share the show. Because let's talk. I want to start a couple places, and I'm writing my notes down here because why not? And drop some questions in the chat for me, you all. If you have any questions, please ask them. I have answers. Melvin Russ McCray put in the chat 2 years too late talking about JDR. And hey, listen, I could have believed that some things and some changes were going to be made from a perspective of wanting to play better and wanting to win and wanting to move further had that move been made much sooner. 2 years would have been optimal. In terms of this particular year, after the Chicago Bears game would have made me believe that. Yeah, I would have been like, oh, coach knows he has bosses now. He understands the assignment in that he is someone that he must communicate with in order to make recommendations on how to move forward or what he would like to see happen or to be done. It's not just him with the autonomous decision-making authority. I would have believed things a bit more from a this season perspective had the message that came this past Friday come after the Chicago Bears game. Perhaps then it was still a do your job from a player's perspective. Maybe the coaches got, were felt like they were doing theirs and others were not. So I'll let that be there. Okay, it was a move and it was made and okay, but it was late in terms of if you were trying to seek changes and wanting to believe and having your words and your actions to match, a little bit too late there. Here's one thing I've noticed about Coach. He did the same thing when conversations and trade conversations were heating up and the rumor mill was really starting to spin. Whenever somebody would ask about it, he would say, I'm not talking about that right now. I'm not getting into that right now. Until it was like the final, like the day before, he's like, I think I have some updates for you on Wednesday. It was abundantly clear, at least to me, that there were going to be some changes made, that he was going to make some changes, and he was aware of that. Now, if you go back and listen and pay attention to what his response was in terms of his own job security, doesn't seem worried about that at all, not at this time, not at that time, I should say. But in terms of any changes that were of his decision-making authority, I've noticed whenever he says he's not going to talk about that and he has to repeat himself, then that always means he's going to do something. Always, almost always. So that was kind of my sign. If anybody would like to say goodbye to Jack, they should do it now while we're still in Dallas. That's how that went over. Have you all ever noticed when they lose, especially bad, which happens often, when coaches asked about being surprised about something that the opposing team did, he always says he wasn't surprised. They weren't surprised. Never seems to be surprised. Yet, the team looks totally unprepared for what's happening in real time on the field. I just wanted to say that out loud, to say that I said it, and also to say, isn't that interesting? Now, maybe it's not important, as Coach likes to say, but I do find it interesting that it's never a surprise of what these teams do, yet they're always unprepared to respond or even actively alleviate those things from transpiring in real time. May not be important, but it certainly is interesting. I wanted to comment, and I shared this with him directly, Sam Fortier's question about, well, if you don't make any changes, can you expect there to be any changes? And, Coach Rivera actually brought that up in his press conference on Friday, called Sam Fortier out by name, just like the question you asked me, Sam Fortier, can I expect there to be changes? If there are no changes, well, hey, I'm not saying, and I joke, transparency, I joke with Sam about this, like, oh, did you help Coach make that decision? No, he did not. Absolutely not. It was purely a joke. think they did that to themselves. I want to go back to the last question that was asked by my colleague, David Harrison, excellent colleague of mine, that asked the question about what was going on the sideline and some things that were happening on the sideline. Love button, fire emoji in the chat if you heard that question and you saw Coach Rivera's nonverbal response to that question, where he didn't want to share any specific, he didn't want to get into it, didn't want to just, mute, and just shook his head. I had posted on my Facebook and Twitter because I saw what happened. I saw what was happening. And then my colleague Donna Hopkins grabbed her binoculars. She saw what was happening as well at one point. And so we were talking about it, Donna, David, and myself, because I was sharing with them, here's what happened. And here's what's happening. So if you've seen rumors about the coordinators getting into it, that was a total misconstrue of the question and the context of what was happening. That absolutely did not happen. After the first Cowboys touchdown drive, can someone put in the chat clarity? Because I want to go ahead and clear it up because I saw it. And so I was sharing what happened, but it, without the context, I'm looking at it and I'm looking with my binoculars and I'm looking up at the broadcast. So I can clearly see the broadcast is not capturing what is transpiring on this sideline, which was a bit more interesting than Dak eating that turkey leg, if I must say so myself. What was transpiring was this. After the Cowboys' first touchdown drive, Jack Del Rio was having a very intense conversation with Cody Barton, Jamin Davis, and Benjamin St. Juste. After that, there was some more conversations being had because, of course, the Cowboys now have gained some momentum. After that, Jonathan Allen was having some spirited conversation that wasn't necessarily intense, but it was, in fact, spirited conversation with his teammates on the sideline. Second point. Third point. With the 4th and 1, where Jahan and Brian bumped into each other, Coach, offensive coordinator Eric Bieniemy had some reactions to that on the sideline. He was not happy. He was displeased. Those were the 3 occurrences that happened on the sideline. That while that question was asked, I know in some of the groups, and I think I saw on Twitter where it was totally misconstrued to the coordinators were arguing, well, no. So clear that up, send that message. CWall saw it all. That's literally step by step everything that was happening. Now, what I do want to bring your attention to is the way Coach responded to that question, because it was intense and it was spirited, and there was definitely some displeasure expressed across those 3 instances. Which leads me to this. I had come across some information, and you all do want to hear this. And I debated on whether or not I'd say anything. But why not? So love button, fire emoji, if you want to hear the information that came and dropped into my lap, because sometimes that just happens. What was shared with me, and this may not mean much, but what was certainly shared with me was that it sure felt like there was some bad vibes amongst the team Wednesday evening. It just didn't feel right. So I want to say that and couple that with, I know that my colleague John Kahn is also, reporting and sharing what he's there, as we all are, as we all who are there consistently and are there, we're all sharing. But that was some very direct information about Wednesday evening, that there was some clear, something just didn't feel right, and this is bad vibes amongst the team. Not a lot of engagement from the team Wednesday evening. So I've talked a lot about Eric Bieniemy's approach and the intensity that he brings. And I know I've kind of coupled that with some questions and folks may be looking for my response. And I've talked to my colleagues with Bowie TV, with Darrell Owen, shout out to Darrell, because I asked a question about how should Eric Bieniemy be evaluated this season. And really, I did that for a reason, in terms of this is his first season with Sam, all of that. How much does all of that matter in terms of how he's evaluated? But honestly, when you look at it, it's how much all of the coordinators and coaches to be evaluated on. And so I want to clear this up, because I'm going to say this out loud. And it was more so because I know that we've discussed, some of us have asked John directly because we know what people are saying. And it was more so of they would like for Coach Rivera to take some of the responsibilities back. Now, this is not to say they don't want him to be a coach. This is not to say any of that, right? But that some players would like to see Coach Rivera take some more of these responsibilities back. Not getting into specifics about which of those responsibilities. Here's what I'll say. Here's what's actually disturbing, right? Because I want to go to this question that DJ is asking. Well, what will it take for him to be able to have, I'm assuming, a chance to be a candidate for the head coaching position? Now, well, let's be for real, right? If people got their eyes, there's a lot of issues here. Because like I'm telling you, I know because of what was shared with me, there was some bad vibes. All right. It makes all the sense in the world based on the product on the field on Thursday. This team is defeated. They are fractured. It's some hurt stuff going on. Not getting into specifics, but what was shared with me based on what was going on Wednesday night and what the look and feel was Wednesday night, and what was shared with me was there was no surprise that that's what happened on Thursday because of bad vibes on Wednesday night. And yes, there was no blow up between JDR and EB. Lamar, you're going to have to listen to the show. You came in late, so you're going to have to back that up. That was a complete misconstrued lie. It wasn't even nothing. Nothing happened between JDR and EB, and that's real.